Phil, it is that time of the day where we ask you to sort of mark people's card for the weekend. So much sport going on. It's really important that we let people know what they should watch, well, if they have a bit of time they can watch, and what they should absolutely rule out. And I mean, I'm looking at your list today, and you've been a bit more of a cold killer about you this morning,
Yeah.
Phil. It has to be said that, like, West Brom still remain rooted in that won't watch zone, but Burnley, and it might be just by virtue of who they're playing, you've promoted them right up the list.
It's only because they're playing Spurs, though.
Yeah.
They're a might watch. But yeah, there is so much sport going on this weekend. You do have to be ruthless.
Can I ask you about your one area of your ruthlessness that I'm slightly surprised about, or lack of? How is Southampton-Everton not in the must-watch, given the Irish interest and Everton's big start?
The Irish interest there, well, okay, Seamus Coleman's out of that one. Then with Southampton, none of the Irish players are really getting into the team. But I know Everton, regardless of what happens tonight at Villa Park, Everton will be top of the league if they beat Southampton. I said it's a might watch, and you know yourself, Adrian, might watches tend to turn into must watches for me, because I start watching them. Basically, the way I approach it is I might watch it, I sit down and it could be on, and oh, that's a good game. Like, say for example now, last Sunday, Spurs West Ham. I'm doing a bit around the house. The game is live and off the ball. I listened to the first half. It's Nathan Murphy and Brian Kerr, and I'm thinking 3-0. Do I need the second half of this? Then happened to check Twitter. It's 3-2. I was like, okay, I'll put on the last 5 minutes, see what happens. And then Lanzini scores. So that's kind of just what happens. You have to be, you can't, it's very hard nowadays to actually find the time to sit down and watch a full 90 minutes. So I obviously have a few of those games where I think these games deserve the full 90 minutes, and I include Villa and Leeds tonight, because Villa can go top of the Premier League for the first time in 19 years. Villa Leeds is almost a throwback to a Premier League game in the 90s, where, you know, you're thinking of all those great Irish players that would have played for Leeds and for Villa.
Where have Leeds gone in the last couple of weeks, in your opinion, Phil? Obviously, on Monday night, I thought were the better team, ended up getting beaten. Their goal tally, we thought, was just going to be through the roof, and they would be must-watch every single week. They're still exciting to watch, but have they gone off the boil a little bit after those opening couple of weeks?
I don't think so. I think this is what Leeds will do. They'll dominate teams, but they just won't score enough goals. I mean, you think back to the Arsenal FA Cup tie last season, where they dominated Arsenal in the first half. Mikel Arteta said it was like a really unpleasant trip to the dentist trying to play against them, but ultimately Arsenal got the win. And a bit like that against Wolves, Leeds had the ball in the net. They battered them at stages in the game. Wolves, just, we know how well they defend. They defend the numbers, they play in the break, and a bit of fortune with the Jimenez deflection. So look, one thing you know is they will not change their approach. You think even watching the game the other night at Ellen Road, as Leeds are looking for the equaliser, it's deep in injury time. At no point do Leeds just throw one into the mixer. They just don't. It's not like get it into the big man. It's just keep going, play, work your chance, and it didn't come. But no, Leeds are, I just think they're a breath of fresh air to watch the way they play, and there's going to be games where it just doesn't happen for them. But this will be a good game this evening. Obviously, Villa are flying high and look so good at the back. That's where they were so vulnerable last season, but they're keeping clean sheets, and can't help but think that Martinez, the signing of Martinez, has a lot to do with it.
Signing of the season, potentially. Manchester United against Chelsea tomorrow, 5:30. The bad news for Manchester United, this is obviously a must-watch, by the way. The bad news for Manchester United is that it's at Old Trafford.
Yeah, and this is the battle of two managers to decide who knows the club better. Two players, two former players, two club legends, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Frank Lampard. Solskjaer had Lampard's number last season, but Lampard had the last laugh when he won that FA Cup semi-final, which, you know, going into that game, you felt United would be favourites, but then Solskjaer was forced to make a lot of changes because they were still trying to get top four, and he had been picking the same 11. Now, the way this game looks, obviously we know Chelsea will probably have a lot of the ball. They like to attack. United, we saw them the other night sit in and play in the break. Chelsea are so vulnerable to teams playing on the break. They obviously kept a clean sheet against Sevilla, and that was their first 0-0 draw that they've ever had under Lampard. So this is actually this is a good game for United in terms of the way Chelsea are going to approach it. And you think back to last season, the first game for Lampard's first league game, it was a 4-0 defeat away to Manchester United. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's funny, we've talked about United before, where you think that Solskjaer is under real pressure and they just pull out a result. I mean, even the result last week against Newcastle, going 1-0 down, and you thought it's 1-1 with 5 minutes to go, and you're thinking this isn't going to be great. Then they come away with a 4-1 win, beat PSG. If they beat Chelsea, then all of a sudden, you know, nobody's talking about Solskjaer's future anymore, and it's all about hooking up.
Which one of them, speaking of hooking up, they're third, Solskjaer and Lampard, third and fifth respectively amongst the odds to get the boot. Which one of them is getting sacked first?
Ooh, I would still favour Solskjaer, because I think, given all the players Chelsea have signed, I think Lampard will get a bit of time. Unless it goes spectacularly wrong. But how can it, given all the talent they have, when, like, what people would say is a failure for Chelsea is if they didn't build on finishing in the top 4, that they didn't get closer to the top 2 this season. But that looks like it's going to happen, because the top 2 are not as strong as they were. So Chelsea should be a bit closer. And yeah, we saw glimpses of them last weekend, how good Timo Werner is. We know how good he is. He started to score goals, but just calamitous at the back. Now, the problem was Kepa was in goal last week. Mendy came in for the game against Sevilla, and then they kept a clean sheet. So yeah, I would still favour Solskjaer, but Chelsea are so volatile at times. You just don't know. You just don't know. But that's one to keep an eye on.
There is a chance that Petr Cech goes above Kepa in the pecking order of Chelsea goalkeepers by the end of the season. Arsenal against Leicester is in your must-watch, Phil. I have this down as a 0-0.
Well, Arsenal have the second best defence in the Premier League this season. So you think back to what was happening last season under Unai Emery, and obviously Arteta has made them a lot more solid. Yeah, Partey started the game last night, so that would suggest that he's going to come in. Leicester obviously won, but Leicester have lost a couple of games now in the Premier League. I actually had tipped Brendan Rodgers to be the first manager to get sacked this season. People laughed at me, and rightly so, after their start of the season when they smashed City 5-2. But I think Arsenal will get a result here. Now, the only thing is, if Vardy comes back, that'd be massive, given his record against Arsenal. It's a great record, and obviously was very close to joining Arsenal, something I really would have liked to have seen with that squad at the time, the Arsenal squad at the time, where, you know, they were seen as a bit soft. But obviously Arteta has changed that.
Yeah, the completing the lineup of must-watch games. West Ham against City. I mean, I'm struggling to tell me why you need to watch this, Phil. I'm struggling to get the motivation for this one.
Okay, well, West Ham last week, we've touched on that. That was unbelievable the way that finished.
One-off blip, yeah.
The week before, or the game before, they won 3-0 away to Leicester.
Two-off blip, yeah.
They won 4-0 at home to Wolves. West Ham are now a decent team to watch. They play counter-attacking football. Bob Bowen has been a great addition to the squad. They brought him in January. We know how good Mikel Antonio is. So has David Moyes got a way of playing with? Is the West Ham way now just sit in and hit teams on the break? If so, then they have to be resolute in defence against Manchester City, and then they can try and counter-attack City, which, even though City have obviously invested heavily in their defence, they're still, you know, easy, well, not easy enough, but you can get at them when you attack with pace. But this is a game that City always win comfortably. That's why I want to watch it, because I want to see, can West Ham stop the rot, because they have been absolutely obliterated by City, especially at the London Stadium. So that's why I'm curious to watch it. Will we see David Moyes running onto the pitch dancing again like he was last week?
Yeah. Stuart Pearce there, was reading an article of him during the week. Not a huge amount been spoken about his role there. Maybe I don't know if you'd be reading too much into it to say that he's that he's like a big part of the reasoning for this thing, but something has changed. I mean, I know there's been additions, but something has changed behind the scenes to get Moisey dancing again.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe Stuart Pearce just scares the players into good performances, but definitely, it didn't look great, the fact that Moyes came back last week after being watching the games at home, and they obviously won those games against Wolves and Leicester, and then they're 3-0 down after 16 minutes. But whatever he said at half time, they kept going. So Yeah, he was everyone's favourite to be, most people's favourite, excuse me, most people's favourite to be the first manager to get sacked. So it seems that kind of talk is gone now.
Listen, we can all get behind that. And so we've mentioned, I think that's pretty much what we've mentioned here. Won't watch Fulham, Palace, Wolves, Newcastle, and Brighton up against West Brom as well. I mean, Palace is the only one that you might think you might be tempted in by there, and seeing Newcastle getting beaten 4 or 5-0, also an attractive proposition. But you're definitely not watching any of those games, Phil, right?
I don't think so. I forgot to mention Liverpool, Sheffield United as well. That's a must-watch because is Ryan Brewster going to come on at Anfield and put one past Adrian, and will he celebrate if that does happen? But yeah, just interesting to see what kind of lineup Liverpool go with. I thought Fabinho was very good, and we know Alisson is getting closer to returning. But with Adrian and goal, all Liverpool games are a must-watch.